Hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of A Book. My name is Laura. I am so glad that you are here. As always, we have a fantastic author for you today that we are interviewing. His name is Jody Sperling. But before we get to Jody and hear everything that he has to say about his books, his writing process, and in particular about marketing your books, I would like for you to hit that like and subscribe button. When you do that, it helps our authors out. Well, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get to Jody. Jody, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you are here today.
Hey, Laura, thanks for having me. I appreciate it and look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, we're going to have a great conversation about marketing. And I know that you know what you're talking about when it comes to marketing books. But before we get to that part of the conversation, tell us about yourself. Tell us a little about you.
Yeah, so I started writing like so many people to impress somebody that I was romantically interested in. And I kept on writing even after she went her own way, and it became a part of my life that I really can't live without. So I got something amazing out of it, and I've been writing for a little over the past 20 years. And it's been a journey of a ton of ups and downs, but something I would not trade for anything.
Wow, long time. Some people, writing is just in their blood, and it sounds like you are a writer. You don't just write,
Yeah.
but you are a writer. Would that
Yeah,
be accurate?
I think so. Yeah, I feel like that. I always want to be really careful because I guess I do hold the belief that anybody can write a book.
I'm so
I
glad you said
also,
that.
yeah, I do also believe that a lot of people will never write a book because it is one of those illusions that seems so effortless and easy, but when you really get to the brass tacks, writing a book itself is incredibly difficult. I think that the majority of the podcasts out there that are on this subject are really how to just finish a book. And so I think you and I both deal with the finished product and speak to people who have finished it, but it's very difficult to write a book.
Yeah, yeah. So I love that you said that anybody can write a book. And I'll tell you
Yeah.
why that is so important for me is because we no longer live in a day and age where people have to ask permission to write. And that is really what this channel is all about. It's helping people overcome their fears. Maybe they're sitting on a manuscript and they don't know what to do with it, or they're afraid of the writing process because of what comes next. And so we talk about that because it used to be that people would write out their manuscripts and send them off to all these publishing companies and maybe hear back and maybe not. And that's not how it is anymore. Anybody can write a book. There's so many tools out there to help writers. But I agree with you 100%. It is not an easy task. I don't care how you approach it. It is something that is always a labor of love, and it is a labor, and there is more to just sitting down and penning out the story when it comes to publishing a book, as you well know. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me this, when did you said you started writing 20 years ago, but when did you get your first book actually published?
Yeah, that's a long story. So I published the Nine Lives of Marva DeLonghi with a small press, and it was with them for 13 months. So they did a print run of 5,000 books. We sent that out into the world, and sold that print run. But their goal for doing a second print run was to sell that whole print run in one calendar year. And it turns out that it was a fairly strict time frame. So if you sell out the 5,000, then we'll go print run number two, and we'll do this again. If you don't, then you're shelved. And they
Mm.
had the right. So it's something that I find very few authors coming up right now understand, is that if you do go with a traditional publisher, in almost all cases, you're going to be signing away your rights in
Mhm.
perpetuity for all of your life, plus like 25 years after you die. So it's a really serious contract. It's probably the right way to go for plenty of people, but it's something to be aware of that when you sign that contract, oftentimes you are giving up the rights. There are some small presses now who are doing slightly different things, but this press was doing a traditional rights contract. I was comfortable with it. I had no issues with it. But when they said they weren't going to reprint, that kind of made me feel a little trapped. So I spoke with a publishing lawyer. And we put together an offer to buy back the rights, which I did buy back the rights. And so we did a rerun of that book, and I've self-published everything since then. And the real push for self-publishing for me has been since just about a year ago. So I put The 9 Lives of Marva DeLong High on Amazon with a reworked cover. Let's see, January of 23. So.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, man, I can't imagine being trapped in that. That was something, and I don't know how I knew this because I knew nothing when I first started writing 7 years ago. I mean, I knew nothing. I wrote because my business coach at the time said you need to have a book if you want more speaking engagements. And that's what I did. I wrote a stupid book, never should have been published. It was garbage, still garbage. But I did it. And something in my brain told me that there was no way I wanted to ever have somebody else have control of that. And I'm so glad that I learned that lesson early on, because I have heard so many stories so similar to yours where they signed their rights away and they couldn't get them back. And so you're fortunate that you were able to. But it is the reason why I'm a big proponent of self-publishing. I tell everybody, publish it yourself. But yeah,
Me
what a
too.
journey.
Yeah, my belief, and I firmly believe this at this point, until you can get a 7-figure contract from a publisher, you shouldn't even be having conversations with them, because they can't truly help you up until that 7-figure contract point, because that's when you start running into international contracts and distribution that can really escalate what you're able to do. But before that, I mean, you can easily. Yeah, you know what? You can easily work your way up to $1 million of book sales. It's going to be really hard work, but the process is simple. So.
And I think that's what you're going to talk to us a little bit in the short amount of time that we have. You're going to impart your knowledge and wisdom. So did I read somewhere that you have sold over 68,000 copies of one of your books?
Let's see. I mean, right now I can't tell you the exact number of copies, but I can tell you that that's not correct. So The 9 Lives of Marva DeLong High in all printings has sold 30,000 copies.
Okay.
And so reasonable for where I'm at in the journey. Certainly enough to speak about this, but I do like to bring the caveat at this point that there are people who are better at this than I am by a long shot. I feel comfortable talking about the marketing process because I really think I have been places where a lot of newer authors are going, and I can speak to them about the uncomfortable truths. But I do want to be really careful to say, if you've sold more than 30,000 copies, don't listen to me. Listen to somebody who's sold more than me, and that's okay.
For sure. I have not sold 30,000 copies. So I'm here to listen to you because you are far ahead of me in that game. And so what I want to know from you, what I want to hear from you today, Jody, is a couple of things. First off, let's back up a minute, because I would like to know your actual writing process. When you sit down to write, what is that like? Do you set a time limit for yourself? Are you just straight from consciousness and you end when when your brain is empty? What do you do? What's your process like?
Oddly, my process has changed a little bit over the past year. Part of that has to do with I have gone all in on in-person events. And so I've been doing a lot of scheduling to go to different comic expos and places like that. And the reason I bring that up is because physically my body is behind a booth, like working a store, oftentimes 3 days on a week. And so that really limits the amount of time that I can write. I get a little bit of writing time at the end of the day. And if I'm super ambitious, sometimes before I go back for the weekend to sell at a booth. And then Monday through Thursday, I have 3 kids and a wife. And so I've really had to adjust the way that I tackle this for the time being to make sure that I am living a full rounded life. I'm not the kind of person who believes in burnout or anything of that nature. I'm going to put in every bit of energy and effort I can to get the results that I believe in. But I also want my wife to like me, to enjoy me. I want my kids to know that I was there for them. And so I probably make some compromises to make sure that I have a well-rounded life. So that's a long preemptive answer to say, for the most part, I have always worked on a time scale. So I find it difficult to tell myself I'm going to write 15 words, 1500 words a day and then hit that, because some days when I come to the keyboard, it just is so difficult to figure out where the story is going. And I like to give myself permission to just have the keyboard, but I have more of a ground rule for myself that I'm not going to be searching the internet. I'm not going to be on Twitter or X now, Facebook, any social media at all. It's just me and the story. And if I don't write, that's okay. But for this period of time, I am here. It's me and the laptop. And I stole that directly from Jerry Seinfeld. His notepad, his jokes, and a blank room was basically what he said. And I thought that identified with that. Everybody has a different process, but that's the process that works best for me. So I block out time.
Okay, all right. Well, that's um, I don't know. Not everybody has the forethought to do that. They sacrifice a lot because they get so lost in it. And I am one of these people who does get lost in it. And I don't write on a consistent basis. I don't have a schedule. I fit it in when I can and when I'm feeling the motivation to do that. But then when I do, I sit down, I lose all track of time, and 3 days later I come up for air.
Isn't
So
that
I'm
nice?
a binge writer. I'm a binge writer.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about this marketing process. So you're learning, you've started to dial in a process that is working for you. And I want to hear all about this because I think there are plenty of people who are in the position that I am that could learn from you. So let's talk about this. And before we go any further, Jody, I want you to first tell us a little bit about your podcast, because I know that
Sure.
you help people on the podcast when it comes to book marketing.
You bet. Yeah, so my podcast is called TRBM. It's been its own kind of fun evolution, and it originally was called Create Collaborate. That's what my LLC is. I thought I was being really clever and fun. I like the idea of collaborating with other writers. I like the creative process with them. So I knew kind of what I wanted to do with the podcast early on, but it started to morph, and part of that was me leaning into the things that I was already at least somewhat of an expert in, and that happened to be marketing. So I had a marketing background. I think you said you did as well, if I remember our previous conversation. But I had a marketing background for years in the corporate world, and so sliding some of that information into the book world was helpful. But what I quickly realized was that things that work in marketing businesses with service attached are very tricky to apply to an end product type of marketing situation. So if you're marketing art, then that is what the person is getting. You can't sell them a lead magnet, in this case, for free to give them services later. If you give away your novel, you've just given away your blood, sweat, and tears, and nobody paid anything for it.
Yeah, totally true. Okay,
Yeah.
so now you impart some of this wisdom I know in a TRBM, and I want us to get to hear some of this wisdom today.
Yeah, for sure. So that is the podcast now, is talking about marketing. And a lot of times I'm talking directly about the things that I'm going through right now. So my podcast is very topically based on what I am working through right at this exact moment. At the spine of it, and the things that I want to talk to anybody who is watching, listening to this podcast, are the non-negotiables. And so I want to start with the foundation of marketing, which is when people think of marketing, they oftentimes it's an amorphous kind of a word. Some people think that marketing is advertising. Some people think that they're interchangeable words. Some people think that marketing is being on social media, asking people to buy or read your stuff. And all of these things are interchangeable, which is not true. Marketing is the blanket term for all of the activities that we do, from public relations, to advertising, to being on social media, to driving our car, to saying hello to people we meet at church. All of it falls under marketing, because every little bit of it is what builds the brand that you take out in the world. And I never have liked the word branding, but the more that I'm here, the more I realize, if you can think of brand as just being, when people meet me, they meet a consistent me and they know what to expect. That is what gives people comfort, and people who are comfortable understand what to expect. And when they understand what to expect, they act in accordance with expectations. And so that is what I try to talk a lot about with the podcast.
Okay. All right. Great. I love that you said that marketing is not just one of these elements, but it's all of them put together. So, for example, what you are doing today, being on this show, that is just one piece of
Yeah.
your whole marketing scheme, if you will, lack of
Yep.
another term. But it's everything. It is the taking out the print ads. It is the social media. It's just all of it. It's everything,
Mhm.
all the way down to your book cover, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really important. The book cover is a massive piece of marketing for you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think people sometimes overlook that. They don't realize that. Too many people, I don't know that I was one of them. I was pretty sure nobody was going to be on Amazon searching for my book unless they knew
Yeah.
it was out there, right? But I think there are people who think, I'm going to write a book. It's so good. I love the story. Why wouldn't everybody else love the story? That the second I put it out on Amazon, the sales are going to start rolling in. Gosh, I have, and maybe one or two people here and there get lucky like that. But for most of us, that doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen because nobody knows you're out there. So how are you going to get your voice out there? How are you going to work with? I think I remember listening to one of your episodes and you were talking about, I think it was Amazon Analytics, right? Where you
Yeah.
were talking about how do you even get seen on Amazon? How do you get people to know that you were there? You want to touch on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, Amazon is a tricky beast, but yes, I will. I will say a caveat is that a lot of self-publishing is moving toward putting the emphasis on your own property. So getting a website and selling direct to your readers can be a great thing to do. But if you want to just stay strictly with Amazon, then you want to worry so much about the specific keywords. I'm not going to be the expert in this area as much as like Dave with Kindlepreneur. He does a great job, Dave Chesson, of talking about how to make sure that your keywords align with the kind of books that you have out there. That's probably the biggest driver, and people really underestimate how powerful keywords are. So if you are the person right now who is watching, listening to this podcast, and you didn't spend at least a day's worth of hours, so like 8 hours, really digging into keywords for your book, you haven't spent enough time on keywords and you're not being found because people don't know what they're looking for. And
That's
that
great.
might sound like an overstatement, but I promise you the really best-selling people of every book have labored over keywords in depth.
So when you're talking about keywords, SEO, search engine optimization, and in essence, that's what Amazon is. It's a search engine. So when you're talking about that, are you talking about the words that they are using in the description of their book?
Yeah, and specifically in this case, so when you go do your book setup, that first page that you get gives all of the basic content information about your book, from the book description to the little section that actually says keywords. And I believe it has 7 empty slots where you can fill in keywords. You don't have to just choose the best 7 keywords. You can fill up that area with keywords and then commas. If I remember, you can probably stuff somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 or so keywords into those slots, which is fine to do. I would say quality over quantity in this case. But yeah, that's the specific section. Picking the right genre is really important too. That's probably second most important, and is in the same place. Finding your niche inside of the genre is really helpful as well. But the keywords are the really heavy lifting there. And you're right, it's all about search engine optimization. So when someone goes onto Amazon, they're going to search for their next favorite read, and they might put strong female detective novel, something along those lines. And if your keywords weren't one of those words, you won't be found.
Yeah. Well, you said something else that sort of triggered a thought with me. You talked about genre. So are you saying that writers should write to specific genres, or are you saying that they need to place their existing writings in the correct genre?
Yeah, so I'm never gonna should on somebody if I can avoid it. I'm not as bad as other
You're not a should.
I'm not a real
Should
shooter.
guy.
Yeah. But I would say you make it easier on yourself when you can identify genre. And when it comes to Amazon, yes, you do need to define a genre. So there's part of our brain that's attached to any book that we write that it's our precious baby. We love it and we want it to be fully understood. I mean, honestly, listen, I said earlier, I have 3 boys and I do. My oldest son has always wanted to wear his hair long. I live in a small town of 900 people in the middle of the continent, and I can't tell you how many people said that he was such a pretty little girl or that they just thought he was a girl because of his long hair. It's like, that's one thing. So I know how frustrating it can feel to be like, you're misidentifying this wonderful thing, and I want you to understand it perfectly. But when it comes time to put your Amazon hat on, you need to put that away and say, if I want to meet readers, then I have to meet their expectations, which we talked about earlier, is that expectations clarify and enable people to take an action. And so you really want to fall in line with that, even though it may feel like you're, turning your back on your beautiful baby.
Yeah. Oh, that's such good stuff. I just love it. Okay. So that's really helpful for a lot of people. I know, I struggled with, because I don't consider myself a fantasy sci-fi writer. I don't.
Yeah.
Although my last book, that is absolutely what it was. And it felt weird putting it into, I wanted to find, I don't know what I wanted to find. I wanted to find the right place to put it that would satisfy me, because I'm like, well, I'm not really a fantasy sci-fi writer. I don't do that kind of stuff, but that was what it was. And I struggled with that. It was almost like I felt like I wasn't being true to myself and what I wanted. But if people were going to find it and read it, that's where it needed to be. And I think that can be so helpful. So had I put that in any other category, I don't think, if I had put that in any other category, you and I would not be sitting here today having this conversation. And do you mind if I expand on that?
No, please.
So, because I put that book in that category, I was introduced to somebody who was searching through that category, saw my book, reached out to me and said, hey, I'm part of this fantasy sci-fi writers community. Why don't you join this community? And I did. And was through that community that I met a huge number of people who have been on this show. So doing the right thing led to some right things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and you never know. I mean, I'm just telling you that's how it worked out for me. But I do believe that there is something to be said about putting it in the right place, because if I had put that somewhere else, readers, for example, who may have been looking for, not that this was by any stretch a romance novel, but let's say that's where I placed it. I put it in the wrong category. If they were looking through that and they see the cover and the title of my book, they're going to pass right over it, and I won't sell anything. So it was important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So what else can you tell us about Amazon and ways to succeed using Amazon?
So let me back up a little bit, because I think that there's a couple of really important things that are big picture relevant. And one of them is that there is no such thing as a fast track. If you are incredibly good at selecting the keywords, if you identify the correct genre, if you wrote a super amazing book, if everything is perfect, you might go quicker than your peers. And there
Great
is
point.
room for somebody to write Twilight. There's room for somebody to write some of those like huge books that we've seen that have stormed the scene. But generally speaking, it's going to feel like nothing is happening for quite a long time. And so I have gotten more and more comfortable with people. The biggest part of marketing is continuing to do the things that you've been doing, regardless of the feedback that you're getting. And so I would say that whether you're doing direct sales, Amazon sales, whatever you are doing, do it and keep doing it. And it's the one thing that will work. If you refuse to quit and you continue to market, you will be successful beyond your dreams. But you have to keep doing it, because it's like a hockey stick. If you look at a hockey stick, 90% of the entire thing is flat. And it's only when you get to the very end of the hockey stick that it curves. And it doesn't curve a small amount, it curves a massive amount, like almost 90 degrees. It's almost a straight up thing right there at the end. And if you had quit any point along the way, you would have never experienced the massive growth. And so that's really what I want to say in marketing is it won't look to you like you're succeeding until you have such a large impact that it can't help but grow. And
it gains momentum the
Yes.
further along it gets. So what I think I hear you talking about also is consistency.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I do think that consistency is really important. I think consistency is important, but I think there's something in mindset. I'd like to confess that over the last year, I have made money on advertising and I've lost a lot of money on advertising. I made a really boneheaded mistake not too long ago that I didn't realize I'd paid to be at a show. I paid $550 to be at a show and I didn't have the receipt. Now, granted, the company that was supposed to send me the receipt didn't. And so I was like, I have no proof that I paid for this. It's a 20-hour drive from me. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go. But then they called me the morning of and they're like, where are you? And I was like, oh, geez. So I've made mistakes and I've like completely thrown the towel in for a couple of days and just been like, screw this. It's too hard. It's too frustrating. And so, yes, consistency, but also something inside you just says, get back up, get back up. And so I'm not even the guy who can tell you quite yet that I don't have bad days. I hear some like mindset people out there say, I never have bad days. I only have bad hours. And I'm like, I have bad days. I definitely have bad days.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just fall back onto that idea of it's my choice now to I've had my frustration and now I'm going to fix this and I'm going to keep working and I'm not going to quit. And so just making an agreement with yourself, I think is what I would say is the most important is agree with yourself what you want out of this process and never surrender
Wow.
once you've made that agreement.
I love your raw honesty. I do.
Well,
Because I think too many people are running around with this Pollyanna attitude and they think that's what sells. But I think honesty sells a whole lot more. And so I love that. I really
hope so,
appreciate
yeah.
that. And so many things about writing, you said it at the beginning, is hard. There are things that are hard. First off, I think if you have a story in your brain that you want to get out, that part's not necessarily so hard. But the formatting of the books, finding the right cover, all the elements that we talked about when it comes to marketing afterwards, those things are hard. And so Jody, we're going to take a break for just a moment. We're going to hear from our sponsor. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of that hard stuff. And we'll be right back in just a moment. Hey everyone, are you stuck trying to figure out how to finish writing or publishing your book? Well, let me tell you about Victory Vision Publishing. Victory Vision Publishing is there to help you cross that finish line. They have package plans that are tailor-made just for your individual needs. They have learning opportunities where you can discover ways of overcoming some obstacles that you might have. Adam Fleming is a wonderful CEO, and they are a fully staffed team just waiting to help you edit, lay out, maybe make a cover for your book. Go ahead and join their email list and check out some of the wonderful books and wonderful authors that they have already helped get published. Yep, Victory Vision is definitely the way to go if you feel stuck and just want some support in getting your book out to the world. You're only one book away from changing the world. victoryvision.org. Okay, we are back. We've been talking to Jody Sperling. He's been talking to us about the marketing process and some of the difficulties that come along with that. Jody, before we went to break, you said something about, you have days when it's hard and you want to give up. You want to not keep doing this marketing thing. And that just resonated with me because maybe not so much when it comes to my books themselves and marketing and publishing my books, all that stuff. But certainly with my podcasting, some days it's like, there's so much work. There's some people don't see what goes on behind the scenes. I know you understand that because you do your own podcast show. And there's a lot to editing, scheduling, all of that, coaching your guests, all the things that go on behind the scenes that others don't see. They see the final product. And there are days when it's like, I don't want to, but I have all of these commitments that I have to live up to. So it can be tough. But I think that's great advice for anybody, whether it is a writer or a podcaster or an artist or whatever it is that you are truly passionate about. I love that you said, make that agreement with yourself. It's like making a contract with yourself. And both you and your inner self have to agree on that contract if you want to succeed. And so that you can get to the end of that hockey stick. I loved the analogy there.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, yeah.
So other things that you do to market yourself, because again, Amazon's only, you talked about other ways that people are sort of branching out and moving
Yeah.
into selling books. Like, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things too that I'd like to say is they're core things that you're going to run into with marketing at some point. So this goes back to the agreement that you've made with yourself. Um, Understand what the agreement looks like. You're going to spend money on this, and there's no way around it. So right now, if you're feeling like this sounds like a drag, I'll be honest, you're starting a small business as an author, especially if you're a self-published author. And so if you want to go the traditional publishing route, then you can be somebody's employee. There's still some hidden tricks in there that are kind of frustrating if you go the traditional route, but they'll take care of a lot of stuff. They'll take care of the cover design, they'll take care of the editing, they'll take care of the proofreading, formatting, all the cute stuff that goes into making a book pretty. They'll take care of that for you. If you're going to self-publish, you are best advised to pay for a cover designer. Formatting of some kind. There is a program out there called Vellum that you can use if you have an Apple computer. I don't know why they've never made it available to Windows people, but there are ways to do formatting fairly cheaply, but it's still a challenge, and still you need to spend some time figuring it out and working through it. Spend money on the editing, spend money on the cover, spend money on the formatting, probably spend money on an audiobook narrator, those kind of things. So the reason I'm saying all of this in terms of marketing is because if you go into the next steps, the other things that I'm going to talk about, if you haven't spent time there, then you can bust your butt doing all the selling in the world. You will sell books. You will get good at marketing. You will sling those books. You can go to shows and sell 50 books. Guess how many readers are going to buy your next book?
Yeah. Nobody.
Maybe one or two who have low standards on grammar, who have low standards on formatting. I mean that. There's a sucker born every minute. So you might, get a few repeat buyers, but if you sell 50 books to 50 people, you are certainly not going to be selling a second book. Whereas if you write a book that's so impressive that everybody who reads it has to acknowledge that you put the effort and energy in, then 30 out of 50, 40 out of 50 are going to say, what do you got next? And that is when the real power of the steamroller starts. So really think about it. You have to spend money in a small business. Nobody in their right mind would ever say, I'm starting a plumbing business today, and then just walk into a house and be like, I'm here to do some plumbing. They'd be like, well, do you have your solder? Do you have your T joints? Do you have your U joints? Do you know what you're doing? Well, no, I don't. I thought maybe you'd provide that stuff for me. It's like, no, you have to own certain things. And that means going into, some kind of debt, whether it's against yourself that you saved up the money to buy that stuff or something. But when we start a business as a writer, as a self-published author, we don't think that we can spend money. So that's important, I think.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's such good stuff. That's not to say that you can't do this for free, but don't expect to be one of those,
Yeah.
million book sellers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to clarify that is who I'm talking to. I mean, I do think that there are plenty of people out there talking about writing inexpensively and doing things inexpensively. Frankly, I'm a DIY kind of guy around the house. I did actually plumb my own house. I watched YouTube videos and figured it out and did the plumbing for my house. My wife is DIY. She tiled our shower. Like, we know how to do things on the cheap for sure.
Yeah.
But
I'm right
but
there.
also exactly. I'm not trying to get on any shows and say, like, look at the brilliance of my work or start a plumbing business. I'm just trying to keep it personally cheap. So
Yeah.
I would apply that to writing as well. Say, like, if you're going to be a DIY kind of person, then expect DIY kind of results.
Yeah. Oh, that's such good stuff. I love it. I love it, Jody. You're full of wisdom for us. So let's talk a little bit about some of these other places besides Amazon that people could be utilizing to get their books out.
You bet. So find somewhere like Shopify is the one. I mean, Shopify is just so good. It's hard to say go somewhere else, but there's Square. There are different websites where you can host a store. And the reason I say go to a place like that is because they already have the integrations for credit cards and payment processing all set up, and they're really universal. So it's nice to have something like that, and set up with something called BookFunnel. It's the one that I know of that's the very best. BookFunnel allows you to host your audiobooks and your ebooks, and then you can just set up an action from BookFunnel to Shopify or Square, whichever you use, where when somebody goes onto your website and they see your ebook, they buy your ebook and BookFunnel fulfills it for you. So it's super duper easy, straightforward. It's really cheap to do that, actually, like $39 a month, I think, for Shopify.
Well,
BookFunnel, yeah, BookFunnel is also, there's a free tier for BookFunnel, so you can start getting your reps in with a free tier for BookFunnel. And once you really start to figure it out, I think it's like $100 for the whole year to have like the mid-grade plan. So it's pretty cheap to self-fulfill your books in that way. But the nice thing is, whereas with Amazon, if you've ever set a book up before, maybe you do $5.99 for your ebook, and they give you somewhere around $2.34 if you have a $5.99 ebook. If you sold that same book through Shopify and fulfilled it with BookFunnel, you keep $5.90. So, it's like 2 for 1 anytime you
wow,
sell.
yeah.
And you're also going to get that person's email address, which is really nice. So you get to build your email list along the way. It's kind of like killing 7 birds with 1 stone if you fulfill your books directly.
So let's talk about the importance then of having a social media account where you
Yes.
can use that account to funnel people. How do you capture people's emails through your social, or do you?
I do, yeah. So this is pretty unpopular because it's fairly high touch and it's somewhat time consuming. Here's how I look at this, and there's going to be people out there who are just like, this is not for me. That's totally fine. I've been doing this for a long time and have gotten such good results. I keep saying it, but I have a large following on X. 28,000 people at last check, so not huge, but significant. And I go in once a week, every single week, and I look at my new follower count, and I have a message. It's a very professional message, but it is a form message, and it just says, hello, this is a form message. You recently followed me, so I assume that you might be interested in some of the things that I'm doing. This is a book you might be interested in buying. Here's a link to it. If not, feel free to retweet my pinned tweet to help me reach more people. So it gives them either
pretty great advice. I like that.
Yeah, it works really, really well. There's so many people who are scared of doing it. 1, because they don't want to be intrusive. 2, because they don't want to get yelled at. And 3, they feel like they're being pushy. But I'm like, hey, I
think if you're upfront, you're upfront with the person that's getting this, and you're saying, hey, this is a form letter. I'm sending you a form letter. Do with it what you want. But
right.
I think, again, that honesty, that transparent honesty goes a long way with people.
Yeah, I've had great results with it. I've had great results with sales with it, actually. I get people directly buying from that form letter every single week. And then from that, I get my pinned retweets always do really well as my email list grows. Because if they take me up on anything else, maybe I do occasionally offer something for free. I get people to sign up through BookFunnel, and it has just been, it's simple and it actually is free. All it costs you is your time. So that's kind of a nice thing.
Yeah, those free things. So social media is important. It's all of those elements that you talked about. Jody, I want to give our audience an opportunity to actually see your writing. I know that you spend so much time teaching people how to market and helping other people that I want everybody to have a chance to see you today. So we're going to go ahead and pull up Jody's latest book. This is Buckshot Blast and the Goldfish Getaway, which I have to tell you, the title cracked me up. I read that title and just, I don't know. What is this about? Tell us about this book and tell us about where it came from, the idea came from.
Yeah, so I have to give credit to Heather O'Brien. She's been an editor of mine for quite a while now, and she's fantastic. She's the one who came up with the tagline, "Fate is for cowards." It's actually a line from the book, but she recognized like the power of that, and I think that sums up what this book is going to be, is the idea that fate is for cowards. So you have 2 brothers. One brother has just lost his business. And the other brother is going insane. The one who's going insane lost a friend in the Middle East during combat. And he believes that the goldfish he now owns is the reincarnated soul of the friend that died in Afghanistan. So he's holding onto this fish, waiting for it to become a human again. And the meanwhile, he's kind of going out of his mind. And the brother who's lost his business is watching his crazy brother get crazier and more unpredictable and more dangerous. And he decides to kidnap his niece and flee, thinking that he's doing it for her safety, only to realize that he's really trying to make something meaningful of his life. And so, you have now a war-trained brother chasing after a brother who's trying to find meaning in life. And it's really about the pursuit. And can everything not end as hideously as it seems like it should?
Oh, I want to ask you something. You mentioned at the very start of this, when we began this conversation, you said that keywords and descriptions were important when it comes
Yes.
to and I noticed, unlike so many books, your description here is rather short. I mean, it's a small little paragraph, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, keywords, marriage. There are plenty of people who are going to search for books on marriage, right? Business. I mean, so I'm seeing all of these family, all of these key words in here in just the smallest of descriptions. Yeah. So that just blows me away that you're able to really have honed in on that. I mean, this to me is you walk the walk, you didn't just talk the talk. And so I'm very impressed by that.
Thank you.
I wondered
Thanks.
when I had looked at this book, I thought, well, that's kind of a short description. And so, yeah, you nailed it there. Good job. And so I want to let our audience know, look, if you want to find more of Jody's books on Amazon, by the way, there will be a link in the description of this video. I'm going to go ahead and read this, Jody, because I know we have some listeners that may not be able to visually see this, but the description of this says, faith is for cowards with a marriage on the brink and a belly up business. Jess and his wife, Kaylin, decide to visit family. But when things go from bad to worse, Jess kidnaps his niece and flees. Can he find redemption before it's too late? Great cover that you have here. Who designed your cover for you?
This one, okay, I have to tell you a little secret. This one I did myself. I almost knew you would. I almost knew you would ask me because it's the only book that I've actually broken my own rule on. I had a dream about how I wanted this cover to go, and so I put it together and I asked my wife, like, am I going to be embarrassed? And she's like, no, it's great. She loved it.
It does look great. Yeah.
I broke my own rule.
How did you how did you do this? So did you use like Canva? Because I know so many people use Canva.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did use Canva. So
I don't ever want somebody to say you can't get a great book cover from Canva, because I have seen some great ones, and this is definitely a testament to that. That's great. I love it. So the letters, they look like a fish cutout. I don't know. It's really cool. I would have thought a graphic designer did that special for you, but no, that's pretty awesome. So great. So yes, we're going to leave the link to that book in the description of this. And also, Jody, I want people to know where they can go to hear more from you, because you're a plethora of wisdom, and I want you to be able to pass it on to people. So you can go to jodysperling.substack.com and you can check out TRBM, which is your podcast. I don't know if we're on here or not. Looks like my screen is not sharing. Let's try this again. There we go. You see that? Okay, so this is your podcast. You want to talk about that for just a moment? What gave you the idea to start that podcast?
Yeah, originally, I mean, again, my first impression is always the wrong one, but I wanted to start it because I knew that it was important to have a voice out there, and I wanted people to be able to find me and have a track record and a reason to be, I guess, an authority in the area. And it's absolutely turned into something that I do because I believe that so many writers have every opportunity to have a great career as an author, and it means learning these lessons and getting these ideas and having a place to go to hear somebody else going through it. And so that is my commitment to everybody who listens to my podcast. Authors I struggle just like you do. I make really big mistakes, and I try to be honest about that process, and then along the way let you know what works and how I can best solve this puzzle, because it's very, very tricky, and that's what TRBM is all about.
Wow. That's cool. So somebody can go on your Substack site and they can either check out the podcast, they can find your
Yeah.
books. There's all kinds of things that they can check out when they get there. And we're going to leave that link also in the description. And you'll definitely want to go listen to some of these podcasts. I know I listened to a few and I was pretty impressed with what I heard. Very insightful. So I want
Thanks,
people
Laura.
to go do that. Jody, if you were going to pass along one of the best pieces of marketing advice that you can come up with in the short amount of time that we have left, what would you say to people? What would be the number one takeaway that you would want to give them?
Something that I haven't said so far. I'm using that as a criteria for myself. I may have already said my best stuff, but this is a criteria that's absolutely important, and you will not have real success until you're willing to do it. So start advertising today, no matter where you're at. And that means actually spending money. Put up an ad on Facebook. Not everybody has a lot of money. I get that. I understand that. I think you can do like $5 a day. But the first time that you subject yourself to an advertising campaign is it changes everything for you. There's no going back from that moment. It's like the difference between playing poker with M&Ms and playing poker with money. You might be excited to win some M&Ms, but you certainly don't buzz like you do if you put money on the table. And I think that that's a really important part. I don't know any authors who advertise who aren't serious, and I don't know any authors who refuse to advertise who are serious. Um, I don't know a lot of authors either, so I'm sure
Yeah.
that somebody out there violates that. But
Yeah.
that's just been my experience.
Okay. Well, I know we were going to wrap this up, but you opened up a can of worms that I don't know how brief you can make this, but when you talk about those ads, that advertising on Facebook, for example, if I'm going to go ahead and pay money, for example, to get my book advertised, is there a particular way in which I should format that ad? How should I present that ad?
Yeah, without going into the weeds, you want to make sure that you have a pixel set up and that the pixel drives people somewhere, because that's how Facebook understands what it's doing. I would also say Facebook is the place to advertise. Don't worry about anywhere else until you're good at Facebook. You can expand out from there, but Facebook is like 70 times bigger than the closest competitor, including Google. They're just
Correct.
massive compared to everybody. So Facebook is the place to start. Get good at that. And I would say start out with basically just an interest type of a campaign. So don't go straight to a sales objective, but do a click objective. That'll be clear to you when you start setting up the ad. There's going to be some learning pains, and I can talk about that elsewhere or
Mm.
however you want, but set up a click traffic campaign to start with so that you can
Nice.
see the kinds of words that people are interested in. It goes back to that keyword thing.
Yeah.
You just run a click test, and you're going to have words in that ad, and you'll understand pretty quickly what people think are good words and are bad words, and then just feel your way toward the good words.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so great. Well, you have given us so much to digest today. And I know that it's all just been in a thumbnail sketch, but we're going to leave links to everything. We're going to leave your Amazon book link. We're going to leave your Substack link. We're going to leave everything in the description here so people know how to reach out to you. And Jody, I know that you have a wonderful heart for marketing and that you want people to hear what you have to say because you have some valuable information. So I'm really hoping that I can send them your way. But it has been a delightful conversation. Any parting words before we go?
I think I've said so much already. Thank you, Laura, for having me. It's been amazing to speak with you. I really enjoy what you are doing, and your personality just shines so much. So I felt so comfortable and welcome here. And thank you.
Well, thank you. I really, really, really appreciate you being here today, Jody. Hey, listen, you have been listening to Jody today, Jody Sperling, and he has talked a little about his writing, and he has imparted his marketing wisdom that he knows so far with us today. And we have enjoyed having you here. Thank you so much for giving up a portion of your time to be with us. As always, have a wonderful day and God bless.